Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We know that this is the 700th episode of Cut the Clutter, and while I thank you all for watching all this while and for making Cut the Clutter what it is, because it's your feedback that's made me improve and change it greatly, and second, because you've kept watching, you've also given me the motivation and impetus to carry on. So thank you very much. Now I realize that I had suggested that I might do something special for the 700th, and I had asked for suggestions. And many of you have sent me very good suggestions. But you know what? In our business, we are slaves of the news cycle. So sometimes when news happens, stories happen, which we think need attention, then everything else doesn't matter. Everything else takes the back seat. So today there are some interesting stories, and we'll talk about those, ranging from politics in Haryana to what's happening with Quad between India, US, Japan and Australia. So from political issues in a smaller state of India to one of the biggest geopolitical games being played out. And there are important developments on both fronts. So we'll talk about each one of these briefly. Also make a mention in passing about one unusual day in British diplomacy, and then for the special episode to commemorate our 700th, I think we'll do something really special either on a Saturday or on a Sunday, maybe over a weekend when you have more time, and we will probably do a live question answer session. So please watch out for that. We'll put out announcements on our social media handles, also on our YouTube page. So please keep watching and keep track of that. Now, Haryana. By this time, you know that the vote of confidence in Haryana Assembly was won by the incumbent BJP-JJP government. It's a coalition. BJP has the majority of the coalition numbers. The BJP has 40 seats. It was 6 short of a majority in the House of 90. As I told you, Haryana is one of our smaller states, mid-sized smaller states. And its partner, that is JJP, Jananayak Janata Party, which was founded by Dushyant Chautala, who is a grandson of Om Prakash Chautala, great-grandson of Devilal, and the son of Ajay Chautala. He formed this party. That party has 10 seats. So 40 plus 10 becomes 50. That gives BJP a safe majority. And then there are 5 independents. There are 7 independents in the assembly, but there are 5 independents who support the BJP. So 55. So we would have said, what is the big issue? There is an easy majority, they will win. But the issue was because the farmers' agitation is going on, and the farmers' agitation at this point is focused or concentrated in 3 states. Punjab, the BJP has no stakes. Uttar Pradesh, where the BJP rules, it has stakes, but it's not so worried about what happens in Western UP, where this farmers' protest is located, because it thinks that as time passes, it will be able to recover from the damage this has caused. Also, damage, if at all, will be in a well-defined geography over 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 seats. But Haryana is very important. Why? Because just like Uttar Pradesh, Haryana is on the borders of Delhi. Punjab is not on the borders. People who've come to Singhu, mostly from Punjab, have to come through Haryana, and they are sitting on the soil of Haryana. They are not sitting on the soil of Punjab. So Haryana is a very important state. Also, Haryana for Delhi, for anybody who is organizing a protest in Delhi, you need to bring in people from Haryana. Indira Gandhi used to do that. In fact, Bansilal used to do it for her. And even today, anybody who has to do it will do it. Even during the Anna movement, the RSS brought a lot of their workers from Haryana to fill up Ramlila Maidan, particularly on days when it did not seem so full, or particularly on days when Baba Ramdev was speaking or doing something special there. Nevertheless, Haryana is important. Also, it's a state that BJP rules. BJP rules in its second term. It also knows that it's ruling it despite the fact that it does not have the Jat vote. And we talked about that in some detail earlier. Now, that gap of the absence of Jat vote is filled by JJP, because JJP apparently or presumably gets quite a bit of the Jat vote, because this was the vote of the old Lok Dal, which was the Devilal Chautala party, Devilal Om Prakash Chautala party. After that, this vote has broken up because Chautala's two sons have gone different ways. One, in fact, is serving a 10-year jail sentence. And this grandson formed yet another party, so a lot of the vote shifted there. So this coalition was also a way of bringing the Jat factor in the BJP government, which BJP itself was lacking. Jats are 20+% of voters in Haryana, but they are also the most dominant, the most empowered caste in Haryana. You can't keep them out of your government and still run the state. Now what's happened is that it's the same Jat base where farm protests find most of their support. Even if you look around Delhi, you will find crowds at Singhu, which borders Sonipat district, which is a Jat dominated district. Or you can see Tikri, those are areas again bordering Rohtak and other districts which are Jat dominated districts. If you look the other side of Delhi, say generally to the south, where Delhi shares a border with Haryana and then goes towards Rajasthan, NH8 as it's called, National Highway 8, on that side there are hardly any crowds. And in fact, we saw a video where Yogendra Yadav, who belongs to that area, these are the Mahendragarh, Rewari, Narnaul, these districts of Haryana, he actually was ruining the fact of that video that too few people from this area had joined the protests, although this is his area. Now that's because that area is dominated not by Jats but by Yadavs or Raos as they are called in Haryana. So in Haryana, once again, you have to see the perspective. It's very important for BJP not to lose Haryana. They were not going to lose Haryana if you looked at the code logic of numbers. But then these MLAs of JJP and some independents, but particularly of JJP, were now coming under massive popular pressure. Their houses were being gheraued by farmers. They were getting socially boycotted. In fact, just the night before this vote of confidence, one of these MLAs was seen, Devendra Babli is his name, was seen on all TV channels. It's likely that you may have also seen it because he's colorful, he was sounding colorful as most Haryanvi politicians are. So it's very difficult for a boring politician to get elected in Haryana. So he said that if we go to villages, हमको बड़े बड़े डंडों से गांव वाले मारेंगे, सिर पे लोहे का हेलमेट पहनना पड़ेगा, सारी बॉडी पे लोहे के कपड़े पहनने पड़ेंगे. We can't go to our villages. So time has now come for JJP to withdraw support from this government. And he said, in any case, this government will not fall because even if we pull out our 10, there are independents. So government will still survive because remember the Congress has only 30 seats in the House of 90. BJP, as we told you, 40 plus 5 independents and then JJP. Now, when this happened, and other MLAs also found over the past couple of weeks that they found it difficult to even go to their villages or their constituencies because of protests and because of popular resentment that you are part of a government which is of a party that gave us the farm laws, and while we are protesting against the farm laws, we voted for you. How can you be party to this government? So that had given the opposition and many Modi critics some hope that today when the vote takes place, they will be cross-voting and this bunch of JJP MLAs will defect or they will break rank and this government will fall and maybe history will be made. There is no history made if another government falls in Haryana. Governments in Haryana fall like, not lately, but usually they used to fall like English wickets at Motera. But to think that a BJP government will fall like this, it was a crucial time. This BJP, one BJP chief minister was being replaced in Uttarakhand. At the same time, this government was in trouble. Also, a lot of the farm protest supporters, organizers, Modi critics, they had overread this situation in my view, because what they don't know is that politicians, they may worry about being stoned when they go home, they may worry about being beaten up or having slogans shouted at that or having stuff thrown at them. But when they look at the next election being 3 years away, then the only thing that matters to them is power. And if they've got power, they are not about to give it up, because stakes are much too high. And if you know Haryana's politicians, any politician would not give up power for anything, but you had some, we had VP Singh and many others, Madhav Sindhia, but Haryana's politicians will never make any sacrifice when it involves a sacrifice of power that they have, because the principle in Haryana is, अरे सत्ता अपने पास हो तो कभी छोड़ी जाती है क्या? Once you have power, you don't leave it. So that is what a lot of people didn't read, but this played out. So all 10 members of JJP voted with the government in spite of their noises. 7 of the 10 had said that we should break away and we should vote against the government. But all 10 of them voted against the no confidence motion. So the count was as expected, 30 Congress, 2 independents, that's 32 voted for the motion, that is to say the House has no confidence, but 55, that is 40 of the BJP, 10 of JJP and 5 independents voted against the no confidence motion. So they voted for the Manohar Lal Khattar government. This is a house effectively of 88 now, because Abhay Chautala, the uncle of Dushyant Chautala, who is in the rival party, he had resigned his assembly seat in protest against farm laws just some time back, and one more Congress MLA has been disqualified because he got convicted in a case of rioting in Himachal Pradesh, got a 3-year sentence, which means automatic disqualification. So it was a house effectively of 88. So that's where we are, and we have to now see what does it mean. I explained to you why JJP voted for the BJP, and I will give you one more little factoid there. JJP is a party of one-man leader. These are SP, RJD, BSP, even TMC. These are all one man or one woman, one leader parties. There is one leader and then there's a bunch of people who make up the numbers. So this is Dushyant Chautala's party. That party has 2 ministries in the state government. It can have 3. So third one is being kept vacant. One because Chautala wants to keep it dangling in front of others, कि क्या पता किसका number आ जाए, किसको मिल जाए. And second, also because if he gives it to one, then some may get upset and leave, because many of these are people who are Congress rebels, who if Congress had given them tickets, they would have contested on the Congress's ticket. But Congress also had its factional issue. They were seen as people close to Bhupinder Singh Hooda and Dipinder Hooda, so they were denied tickets. Anyway, Dushyant Chautala himself, with just 10 shaky members, has 11 portfolios with himself. So he himself, as Deputy Chief Minister, is holding 11 portfolios, and he has one Minister of State like his Sancho Panza, who is a Minister of State with 2 portfolios and works under him. So look at Dushyant Chautala's portfolios. I will just count them for you. It may or may not be definitive. If I miss out one, maybe that wasn't so important. So he's got revenue, excise and taxation, industry and commerce. Remember industry and commerce. Now, any employer in Haryana, any industry in Haryana or any business in Haryana has to go to the government if it wants an exemption from that law of having to employ 75% minimum from Haryana, or even if he does employ them, to get a certificate that they are genuinely employed and they are Haryanvi. Which ministry would handle that? It will be the Industry and Commerce Ministry. So I am not saying Dushyant Chautala is corrupt. I have no idea, I have no evidence, but I can tell you that ministries that in our politics are called as ATM ministries, where you put your card in and money comes out. So excise taxation, civil supplies and food he has got, industry and development, in industry and commerce he has got, development and panchayats he has got, labor and employment. So once again, labor and employment, look at this new law, 75% law. And then as if all this is not enough, he's also got civil aviation, archaeology and museums, rehabilitation and consolidation. So with all this, me, my 9 MLAs, my 11 portfolios, who wants to give it up the next election in 2024? And who knows what is going to happen there. So you can say this is an outcome where everybody is won. Manohar Lal Khattar has won because his party has survived the no confidence motion, and now for 6 months he doesn't have to worry about any such challenge, because that is the constitutional position in India. There cannot be another no confidence motion for 6 more months. This is also a relief to the central government, because central government now knows that Haryana is safe, and they would like to believe that in 6 months this farmers agitation will probably not be the force that it is right now, or in any case there will be some resolution of one kind or the other. So they've got one base covered at this point of time. Next, for the farmers agitation, it's a little bit of a letdown, because remember, just as the parties issue whips to their MLAs to vote in a particular direction, in this case Rakesh Tikait, who's also a Jat leader from Western UP though, he had also issued an appeal to all farmer MLAs of Haryana to vote against Khattar government. It's evident that nobody has listened to his appeal. So politics has prevailed, interest of power has prevailed. At the same time, the pressure of the farm agitation has failed. That is one for now. The next thing it does is, it's also a victory for Bhupinder Singh Hooda. Why? You might say because he moved this motion, he's lost it, for 6 months he can't move another one, BJP is safe. So what has he gained? What he's gained is two things. One, he has now exposed all the JJP and independent MLAs who voted along with the BJP government to say that there is a farmer protest on, we are supporting the farmer protest. These people, whatever they might say in public, now don't take them seriously, because when the test came, they all went with the BJP government. So then to his farmer base and Jat base, he can go and say, see, I am the one, or we are the ones, the Congress party, that backed you. Not these guys, you voted for them, it was a mistake, they let you down. So that is how it helps him in one way. The second way it helps him is within his own party, because Congress party has its own factions, Haryana has its own factions. There are many competing dynasties there. I think we had done one Karta Clutter talking about all the Haryana dynasties. There are many competing dynasties in their third or fourth generation. In that, given that cutthroat factional competition, now Hooda is able to demonstrate to his party that he's been able to keep his flock together. Now for the Congress party, it's not a small deal that all Congress MLAs voted together on a bill like this. Otherwise, in almost all assemblies that we've seen lately, you will find some Congress people breaking the rank. You want to see examples, Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, and many other states like that. So this is one demonstration that Congress, while being in the opposition, has been able to keep its flock together. So these are the big takeaways from this. And now we come to the second part of this Karta Clutter. That is on the Quad. And what is happening, the pace of developments is much faster than usually happens in geopolitics. So several things have happened. One, there was a phone call between Prime Minister Modi and his Japanese counterpart Suga. Now both sides issued their own readouts of that call. Now if you see the Indian readout of the call, it doesn't look like something very newsy happened. It looks like the usual, how are you my friend, I am fine, let's talk about climate change, let's talk about etc. etc. But when you see the Japanese readout is more newsy, and it's very significant that the Japanese have put it out in public. So the Japanese readout mentions, one, that Prime Minister Suga expressed his concern, and both Prime Ministers shared that concern, and the priority for free and open Indo-Pacific. You know what that means, I don't have to translate it again for you. The next point they say that Japanese Prime Minister expressed his concern over the unilateral efforts to change status quo in East and South China Seas. Now, you don't have to say who's trying to change that status quo. Unilateral efforts to change status quo in East and South China Sea, China's Coast Guard law. We had mentioned this. This is the law where China says now that its Coast Guard can fire at a vessel if that vessel does not follow its orders. It's a very provocative law that the Chinese have enacted. And second, and next, he talked about the situation in Hong Kong and Xinjiang. Now, that is not something that India talks about very often, or India wants to be seen to be talking about, but they did. And also, Suga's readout goes on to say that India and Japan also have shared concerns over Myanmar and, importantly, North Korea. So you can see that that partnership is moving. As that's moving, we get the news that the US Secretary of Defense is coming to India. Now, this is at that level. Now, Secretary of Defense, if I make a comparison with the Indian system, say the CCS, Cabinet Committee on Security. So, those are our senior most ministers, Home, Defense, Foreign Affairs, Finance, and the Prime Minister. Similarly, if you had an equivalent in America, then Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of State, they will be the key people there. So, this is the first foreign visit by an American secretary level officer at that level, and that visit is to India. So, Secretary of Defense General Lloyd Austin first goes to Hawaii, which is a part of America, then comes to India, and then goes on to Japan and South Korea. So, choice of India is very interesting, and it's happening this month in March. Very significant. He has tweeted today, you will see the tweet. He has tweeted today announcing his travel plans. Rajnath Singh has also tweeted welcoming him. So, that's one. Now, that tells you that this relationship is in a good place in spite of the change in Washington. And if you had any doubts at all, then the India, US, Japan, Australia Quad Summit is taking place on the 12th of this month. It's just a few days from now. Now, that's happened much faster than anybody would have imagined. Because when Biden took over and Trump lost, a lot of skeptics had thought that this is the end of the idea of Quad. But soon enough, it became evident that Biden was committed to it. Then there were statements coming out of the US establishment that they were putting quite a bit of priority to it. And then suddenly we hear that there is going to be a Quad summit. So 12th of March, there will be a virtual Quad summit. That means the Quad flotilla is now really moving. This is an ongoing, continuing process now, and there is no reversing or slowing it. Having said that, I told you I will also tell you about an interesting day in British diplomacy, and I got this idea because I found a tweet from my friend and among the foremost foreign policy columnists, commentators in the world, Gideon Rahman of Financial Times, who also featured on our Off the Cuff some time back, you might remember. The tweet from him that reminds us that on the same day, the British had their ambassador or high commissioner in India summoned by the Chinese Foreign Office in Beijing and by the Indian Foreign Office in New Delhi. The Chinese Foreign Office to protest against Britain's comments about lack of press freedoms in China, and to the Indian Foreign Office about the British Parliament discussing India's farmer protests and farm laws. So, one more interesting day in global diplomacy. This tells you also how the world is changing.